Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and in this video I want to share with you some of my favorite really long mysteries. So this is in honor of March of the Mammoths, which is also taking place this month here on BookTube, and in that readathon the challenge is to read a book that is over 800 pages. That is how a mammoth is defined. But for these purposes, I'm looking at kind of mysteries that are basically more than 450 pages, you know, closer to 500. Some of the really long ones, and I want to tell you about some of my favorites. But first, I need to tell you what I found that fit yesterday's prompts for the M&M Manuscript matchup game. That was to find a book that was in a closed-off setting and set in North America. And so I found Murder Goes Mumming by Alisa Craig, otherwise known as Charlotte Macleod. And I'm going to put the picture here. This was published in 1981, and it is part of her series where the main character is a Mountie. He's part of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and he and his new fiancée get invited to an event at a isolated family estate. And I don't think it's on an island, but they have to take a helicopter to get there. It's right on a cliff, right on the edge. So it's very isolated, and then they get cut off. So that's my choice for this prompt. Stay tuned to the end of the video when we will play another round of our M&M Manuscript matchup game. So I started to think about some of the mysteries that I've read that I've really enjoyed that were also really long. And that led me into a really great discussion with Iain about how certain editions of the same book will have really varying page numbers. Because I was saying I was going to get these books from the library, and the edition that comes in, I can't choose what edition is going to come in when I put a book on hold, and so it may have the number of pages I was thinking of, or it might be more or less. And so we got into this big discussion, and I found it really interesting. So there are a lot of factors that go into the ultimate page length of a book, and so I'm going to use this book as an example. This is Grave Doubts by Elizabeth Corley, and I'm going to talk about that, this book in particular in a minute. But this hardcover edition is 538 pages. The paperback edition of this, which is like a trade paperback that looks kind of like this size, is 720 pages. So this is 538, the paperback is 720. Why? What is going into that the difference there, the disparity? So let's get into that. And there are a number of factors. There are the page margins in the book, and this is all the way around. So what are the margins like on the inside, the outside, the top, and the bottom? That plays a huge factor in the ultimate page length of the book. There are the chapter breaks. Does the chapter then fall on a new page, or is it, the new chapter falls immediately after the end of the old chapter? So here's an example. In this book, this is the end of the chapter, and then there is a complete blank page before the next chapter starts, and that's consistent throughout the book. So that is adding a good number of pages just on its own into the book. But then you also have whether or not the font is narrow or wide. So for example, is it an Arial font or Arial narrow? So if you look at the letters themselves, is it a narrow or a wide font? And this one seems to me to be, I wouldn't call this narrow, I would call it a wider font. There's also the thickness of each letter. So in that case, you're looking at the actual ink that is used when they print it. There is the size of each letter, and that is the font size. So this is a good size, a decent size font. I mean, I've read some books where the font is smaller. The font in this book appears to me to be a little bit smaller. But then there's also the kerning, and that's the space between the letters. So if you actually take a look, there are some fonts where there is more space between the letters than other fonts, which is an interesting factor. Then there's the line spacing. Again, like how close together are the lines. In some books they are much closer together, and in other books they're farther apart. And then finally there's the indentations. So how many paragraphs do you have on a page? And often it's the conversations. Like if there's a lot of conversations in the book, then there's more indentations, and that's going to increase the page count. So I thought that was really interesting. Look into why certain editions have more pages than other editions. All right, but now let's just get into some of these really long books that I really enjoy as mysteries. And what I'm going to do for this video, I'm going to start with the shortest of these long books and then move on to the longest. So first up is Stuart MacBride's Cold Granite. This was published in, I forgot to check. This was published in 2005, and it's the first in his Logan McCrae series. This book is 458 pages long, so it's not necessarily massive, but other editions are longer, obviously, and as this particular series goes on, the books also get longer as well. So there are some longer books in this series. This is a police procedural series set in Scotland with D.S. Logan McCrae. These are set in Aberdeen, and I really love this series. This series is called Tartan Noir, and so they are dark in a sense, but they are also quite funny. So I mean, darkly humorous is a good way to describe this series. I really enjoy this series. The poor guy has a lot going on in his life, but there's good characters and good mysteries in this series. So this is the first one of my favorite long mysteries. Next up is Grave Doubts by Elizabeth Corley. I already mentioned this one. This one is 530 pages long, and it's from 2006. This is actually the third in the series. It's the Detective Chief Inspector Andrew Fenwick series, and so I think the series as a whole they're longer books, but they're well worth it, because when I looked this one up on Goodreads, I couldn't remember reading this one, but I gave it 5 stars, so I need to reread it and figure out, because I can't really remember anything about it. But it is set in the UK. I'm not entirely sure where. But this is a serial killer book. A sergeant that he works with, Louise Nightingale, is recovering from her ordeal after she was attacked by a serial rapist. And so she goes home for a rest, and then we move on from there, and there's a serial killer involved, and I just remembered really enjoying it. Okay. Next up is The Werewolf of Bamberg by Oliver Potzsch. I'm not saying that correctly. That's a German name. This is a series that has been translated from the German into English. This one is from 2014, and it is 563 pages long. This is another series where the series as a whole are longer videos. Longer books. This is a series that is a historical mystery series that I really enjoy. They're from the Hangman's Daughter series. They are set in Germany in the mid-1600s, and they are about hangman Jacob Kuzel, his daughter Magdalena, and then another guy from the village who is the doctor's son, or he's training to be a doctor anyway, Simon. And these are again really good historical mysteries, but they are a little bit chunkier, but well worth it. Next up is A Dark So Deadly by Stuart MacBride. Again, Stuart MacBride is, I guess, verbose. This is 596 pages and it's from 2017. This one is the first in this series. I believe there are some more now. This is a series about the misfit mob, they call it. It's where Police Scotland dumps the officers it can't get rid of but wants to. The outcasts, the troublemakers, the compromised. Officers like DC Callum McGregor, lumbered with all the boring go-nowhere cases. So when an ancient mummy turns up at the old castle tip, it's his job to find out which museum it's been stolen from. And these are set, again, I want to say maybe Glasgow, but maybe not. Anyway, that's a really fun series. All right, and then we have Heresy by S.J. Parris. This is 653 pages long from 2010. And again, this is another series where they're all quite a good length. I really enjoy this series. This is set in 1583 with fugitive Italian monk Giordano Bruno, philosopher, poet, scientist, and magician, arrives in Protestant England on the run from the Holy Roman Inquisition. And he is recruited by Queen Elizabeth's spymaster, Francis Walsingham, to look into some stuff related to Catholic rebellion and foreign plots to assassinate the Queen, and he gets sent to Oxford. And then An Instance of the Fingerpost by Iain Pears. This is 685 pages from 1998, and this is 685 pages of awesomeness. I absolutely love this book. This is a standalone book set in 1663, also in Oxford. And this is just so well done. It's a historical mystery, and there are 4 narrators, and they each tell their story one after the other. And as they do, you get more and more of the story of what actually happened. But of course, because every narrator tells the story in their own way, with their own purposes, it's just so fascinating. I love how he uses the narrators in this story, and I just really love it. All right, and then we have Elizabeth George, This Body of Death. This is from her Inspector Linley series, which again, I also really love. This one is 726 pages long from 2010. There are others in the series that are actually longer than this. I just couldn't get a hold of them. I'm fairly certain there's one in the series that's over 1,000 pages long. I had marked this. Oh yeah, so in this case, this is an example of, it's a part as opposed to a chapter, but the part ends there, blank page, it just says July, and then it moves to the next part. So that's another example of, page use in a book. But the Inspector Linley series are set in the UK, modern day. He's an inspector in the police. He is also the Earl of something or other, which causes some conflict, and then he has a sergeant that he works with, Barbara Havers, and these are just so good. There's so much character development in these, and the plots are just really excellent. And then the last on my list of my favorite long mysteries, and this is Tombland by C.J. Sansom. This is the last in his Shard Lake series, and this one comes in at 801 pages from 2018. I love this series as well. They are all quite chunky, but this one was the longest. This particular one in the series is set in 1549 when King Henry VIII's son Edward is an 11-year-old king. And so yeah, this again is just such a fantastic series, really great historical mystery. And then I wanted to end this with a mammoth that I discovered that I want to read. I haven't read it yet, but I get the feeling that I will like it. And this is The Charmed Circle by Catherine Gaskin. This comes in at 699 pages, and this was written in 1988. What I love, what attracted me to this is that it's set in 1940. They are a charmed circle. The Seymour family has everything: fame, beauty, wealth. Julia, the youngest daughter, marries Jamie Sinclair, a Battle of Britain pilot, heir to a decaying castle in the Scottish Highlands. Through Rod McCallum, she experiences another world in Hollywood, the glitter, the corruption. Julia's sisters, Constance and Alex, are very different in temperament, in their yearnings and their ambitions. But can even a charmed circle survive a murder trail which headlines across the world? So this one might not solely take place in 1940. It opens in August of 1940, and then let's see. I have a feeling it probably moves around a little bit, maybe. I should have checked this before, sorry. Part 2 is 1947. Yeah, so that's a mammoth that I am looking forward to getting to. So there you have it. Those are some of my favorite really long mysteries. Have you read any of these? I would love to chat with you about them in the comment section down below. Do any of these sound interesting to you? I would like to encourage you to read them even though they are very long. All right, it's time for the next round in our M&M Manuscript matchup game. What are we going to get this round? Blue gives us setting, and orange gives us small town. We've had that, so I'm going to invoke a no repeat rule and go again. Green. Green gives us time period. Blue gives us 1980 to 2000, which we have had, so let's go again. Green gives us 1950 to 1980, so let's do that. So we need to find a book that was set or written between 1950 and 1980. Oops. Orange gives us detective. And red gives us female detective. Okay, so we need to find a book that was written or set between 1950 and 1980 and has a female detective. I would love to hear what you find that fit those prompts. If you could put them in the comments, that would be excellent. And I will see you for another video soon. Bye.